Hey, how's it going, Yang?
Hello. Hi there. How's it going?
Going well? How about your? Oh yeah, I just asked that. But yeah, really happy to have you here. It's yeah, really great to hear from people with your experience, and especially it feels like your product is really meant for people that in our target audience as well. So yeah, it's really great to hear from you and to kind of
Awesome.
learn from your experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, for everyone who doesn't know, Yang is the co-founder of Plasmic, which is a really cool tool. I'll have him kind of give his spiel for everything Plasmic related. But if you haven't checked it out before, I definitely highly recommend it. We're actually starting to use it ourselves. So yeah, but yeah, I'll let you go ahead and kind of take it away. I was thinking you can kind of go and start with kind of an introduction for your company, maybe give a little bit of a demo, and then from there, once you're done with that, we can kind of go into more of a question and answer type of thing.
Fantastic. Yeah, sounds great.
Great.
Yeah, and thanks again for setting up this session, and thanks everyone for joining. Um, just to kick it off, yeah, I'm Yang. I'm one of the co-founders here at Plasmic, which is we're actually a small startup. We're working on this visual builder, this no code, low code kind of visual builder. Um, and I say visual builder, it's very general purpose. You can use it to create websites, web apps, things like that. And that's what I'll talk about today. Um, in terms of how we got here, oh, sorry, was there a question there?
I don't think so. I
Okay,
think we're
I think I heard you.
good.
No worries. So basically, in my own career, in it feels like a past life now. I used to work on various product teams at other companies, larger companies, and small companies, small startups as well. Um, at teams in Google or Microsoft, or the last startup I was at called Infer. Um, Essentially, in these teams, working on very user-facing products, and this includes websites, web apps. Um, uh, I actually, from life before that, I used to be in academia and did a bunch of research into high scaling distributed database systems and whatnot. But it was actually going into industry and getting exposure to the user facing product problems that I really fell in love with building front ends and building the surfaces that users touch. And part of that uh, that building of surfaces that users touch really involves um, there's definitely no shortage of engineering challenges and front end development, things of that nature. But also, there's a lot of collaboration that tends to happen with other functions in the company. So this includes non-developers like the design team, the marketing team, and usually what I experience in these teams, in these kind of cross-functional collaborations, is there's a lot of time that is spent on just getting on the same page and communicating back and forth across these departmental boundaries. So, for instance, if we talk about design, just as an example, usually the way things are done is designers are working day in and day out in these design tools, these drawing tools, essentially, where they help think up and communicate these rough ideas of how something should look and feel and behave. Um, there's usually a lot of back and forth with engineering in this process, and then ultimately it gets handed over to engineering, who is then throwing all of that out and starting from scratch, building the real front ends in code. And but that's not the end of the story. Then there's more back and forth with the design team where things may have slipped through the cracks, or we're trying to bring the product, what's in code, more up to spec with what's in design, or we have to iterate on the design because there's constraints in the code, or there's a lot of things of that nature that really is just how products are built today. And that's something that my co-founder and I, we've experienced a bunch and thought, okay, what if there was actually another way about this that was much more streamlined and able to, take this very just a lot of this documentation, communication question, working through bugs and issues with the UI, et cetera, and just distill that down into tooling, better tooling that can help us streamline a lot of this. So that's where Plasmic was born. And design is just one example, but in the case of one of our big use cases for Plasmic, it's marketing websites. So also marketing teams as well. There's usually a lot of back and forth and tight communication with between engineering and marketing in this case. And so that's the rough shape of problem that we're really interested in solving. Yeah, so that's a little bit of the premise of Plasmic. And I think that today I mentioned one of our main use cases is building websites and building marketing websites. And one of the big constraints there and requirements is to make sure you can build first of all to your exact brand and kind of experience that you want to communicate for your whether it's a landing page or your main website or what have you. And the second thing is that this needs to be in these days high performance. And page load speed is something that is kind of a critical just baseline requirement. And that's why we also see the rise of various modern frameworks like Next.js and Gatsby and things that are very focused on page performance. And even beyond that, in terms of newer stabs at performance first frameworks. So that's the kind of environment that Plasmic really focuses on. So you can think of Plasmic as essentially this visual builder that integrates tightly with code. So it is this no-code, low-code tool that bridges the gap with code. So I can show exactly what that means because that's kind of a mouthful. But yeah, I guess from there, I can switch gears and share my screen. By the way, I really welcome any questions or anything like that as I'm going. So please don't be shy about interrupting me. Let me see.
Well, I don't have a question, but more of a comment that it's really cool to see you kind of trying to get rid of some of that miscommunication that goes on between different teams. And I know that's kind of a big piece of what we're trying to do is really smooth out communications with developers and other teams. So it's cool to see that other people see that it's an issue as well and are, smoothing that out. So.
Awesome. Let's see, is this coming up?
Yep.
Great. All right. So I'm launching Plasmic right now, and Plasmic is this in-browser essentially app that that lets you drag and drop and create things that ship into production from scratch. One of the first things that people usually comment on when they see Plasmic for the first time is that, oh, wow, it looks like a design tool. It looks like if you're coming from a tool like Figma or Sketch or whatnot, we actually really wanted the experience to be as familiar as possible and just welcoming as possible to folks who are not staring at code all day. So essentially everything on the screen, you can just drag and drop, manipulate. You can create things entirely from scratch. So it is a full no-code tool in that regard. And just to show this in action, I'm going to quickly build a very simple landing page with maybe just one of these built-in templates here. And of course, for your own website and your own projects, you can create things from scratch and adhering to your own brand. But I'm just going to kind of fly through this for the sake of this demo. Maybe I'll insert a pricing section here. And that's really the flow that we want users to be able to have. Any aspect of these designs, you can go in and customize. So you have on the right-hand side a full gamut of essentially the layout and styling controls that that you would need to create completely, bespoke, custom experiences for your users. So that is also on the canvas area. One of the things that people usually comment on is also that, oh, you have multiple artboards here, but these are, unlike in a lot of design tools, these are actually not just completely different hard copies of a design that you have to, maintain. These are actually just two different views into the same design, but on different viewport screen sizes. So you can kind of always be able to keep an eye on how things look on desktop and on mobile. Because it is it's a probably most users, or at least probably a surprising amount of your users are going to be visiting your site on mobile. So it's really important to keep that as a first class thing in mind. Now from here, this you can create these surfaces, but the real magic in Plasmic is kind of this integration with code. And what that means is, let's say you have a Next.js website. You can actually go ahead and install this Plasmic package. This is just a very thin library that essentially loads whatever design you've created in Plasmic over the wire and renders it in the context of your app. So this is essentially what you drop into your code base to make your code base be able to talk to Plasmic and load this design in. And then from that point on, once you've done that integration, you can go ahead and publish any of the editors who are working on these designs. They can go ahead and hit publish, and that can push out a new deployment of this project into production. And so, for instance, if you have some CI/CD process that is kicking off builds of your web app, your Next.js app, then you can trigger those via webhook here, or you can use other techniques like incremental static revalidation to essentially trigger new builds. But the point is that Plasmic is really meant to fit within an existing code base. So we're actually assuming that you already have some kind of code base. For instance, one of these frameworks, Next, Gatsby, Vue, etc., or it can just be completely, something else custom. And we also have kind of this raw REST API that you can query as well. But wherever it is, the assets that you design in Plasmic are not meant to be, hosted by us. So this is one big difference with a lot of, for instance, website builders and page builders. The main idea here is that we're, there's a lot of website builders that are essentially walled gardens. They're great actually end-to-end platforms. So if you just have really simple requirements, you can jump in there and create and publish and deploy and everything in one platform. But there's also a lot of teams out there that have more complex requirements. They need a code base. They need to be running a Next.js website because they have other integrations on the back end or what have you that they need to fulfill. And that's really the place where Plasmic shines. So this is essentially a full low-code builder that you can plug into your existing code base. And just to dive into this one a little bit more, so if you're familiar with React, essentially the way to think about this is this is kind of the key line here. You can render a React component called Plasmic component, and you just give it the name of whatever you want to render from this project. So in this case, we just have a single page called homepage, and if I call Plasmic component component equals homepage, that will render exactly what we designed here in the context of your app, wherever you dropped it in this line. Let me know if that makes sense. So that's kind of the high level workflow into Plasmic. So what I kind of talked about right now is you creating something in Plasmic and then publishing that into any code base or other environment. And so, from that point on, you can really host your built web app anywhere. So if you want to use Vercel or Netlify or even just an S3 bucket, that's entirely up to you. Now, there's this other direction of the code integration, which is also really important to Plasmic. So besides being able to publish into your code base, you can also consume, for instance, React components that you've authored in your code base in the actual design tool. And so this is really powerful. Just to show a few examples of this, from the insertion menu, I'm going to go to this central component store in Plasmic. And here we actually list just a whole bunch of examples of this type of React components. So these are all just normal React components based on various open source libraries. You have off-the-shelf things like YouTube players and various interactive effects, carousels, and full design systems. So in this case, the Ant design system, animation packages, things of that nature. But there's actually a really important category of this type of code component, which is a data fetching code component. And we see some examples here, like if you want to fetch data from Plasmic's own structured CMS, you can do that. So Plasmic does come with a built-in sort of structured data store for, if you ever have kind of very uniform or structured content, like a set of blog posts or a set of testimonials or a set of albums and tracks, or whatever it is, right? So there is something built in to Plasmic for that, but we're actually very unopinionated about where your structured data comes from. So it could come from some commerce backend, like Shopify or Swell or any of these other ones. It could come from another CMS like Sanity and Strappy. We actually partner with these companies. They make a great, standalone headless CMS that you can just drag and drop data from in your Plasmic designs. It could come from Airtable or, GraphQL endpoints, WordPress, or just generic APIs like any arbitrary REST API, etc. And essentially, what this means is that you can just start designing within the context of real data. So maybe to make this concrete, I'm going to insert the Shopify one because Shopify is super popular. And essentially, that's all it takes for you to get something showing up from, for instance, a Shopify backend in your Plasmic design. We can configure on the left-hand side here what store I'm pointing at, but for this demo, I'm just going to leave it at the default example store that we have here. And when I select this product collection component, you can see on the right-hand side just all the various props that you can pass into this component. So for instance, I want to display maybe the new arrivals category of products or the featured category of products. So you can configure this. You can also configure other attributes about the query that you want to slice and dice by. And then once it's fetching this set of products for each one, we actually see that you can display some set of fields or some set of media, and it's really up to you. This is very freeform, so you can completely change up the layout however you want. So let's say I want to take this text field, I want to move it down here. Maybe below that, I'm going to add some more fields like the product price and maybe the an add to cart button. This is just getting stamped out for each of these products. And maybe I want to configure the layout here a little bit. I'm going to change this. Excuse me. I'm going to change this to be a slightly larger font, maybe bold as well. And actually, you know what? Maybe I want this. I'm going to wrap it in a horizontal stack, and then kind of have this text field on the left, and then maybe the product price on the right. I'll spread these out, just something like that, and maybe I'll baseline align these, and yeah, maybe that's kind of like the design that I want, and then maybe this whole card here. I also want to apply a bit of shadow and maybe a rounded corner, a little bit. And I'll also play with the spacing as well. Maybe like, whoops, maybe 32, 32, is that? Yeah, anyway, you can, you can go to town here, but that's really the workflow that we want to enable with Plasmic, just like really rapid iteration, immediately being able to see what you're manipulating and the results of that, um, and be able to just from here, that's all it takes, and we can deploy this into production. There's no separate writing up of presentational code and CSS and whatnot. And then on mobile, there's another aspect of Plasmic, which is the kind of responsive design capabilities. So, maybe on mobile, I'm noticing like, oh, it feels a little bit cramped. Actually, instead of 4 columns, I really want this to be just 1 column instead. And and so on and so forth. You can essentially make these adjustments or overrides to your design that are specific to, for instance, the mobile only variant of the page, and that starts getting into the whole other side of Plasmic, which is about variants. So you can create different variants of your pages or components, and you can use that for creating, for instance, A/B tests, or creating different localizations of your page, or creating different different customized targeted versions of your page for different audiences, things like that. So
Start the recording also. Yeah, so I'll keep an eye on the waiting room, and then we can kind of just jump back into it, and then I'll post the recording for everybody who didn't make it back in.
sounds good. Yeah.
Next time I'll ensure that I have a paid Zoom account, and then it'll be fine.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah.
Dylan, I think your question, just wanted to circle back to it. Yeah, I think, so just to repeat the question, I think you were asking about whether working in these larger companies was helpful in prepping for startup experience. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's kind of a long question, but yeah, that's the gist.
Awesome. Okay. So I think that, yes, it definitely helps. I actually, I think that when you are first starting out in industry, it can be helpful to first get your feet wet, and kind of learn within the context of a place that's really well suited for learning. So these larger companies, they have a lot of essentially everything from the code that's there to the processes to the systems that they have in place, that you can really draw from and learn from, and just kind of understand how things work and are done. The people you meet there are also really interesting, because they're these large teams. You can you can meet a lot of folks, and really great folks in these companies. At the same time, I don't think it's a hard requirement. I think you can. It's not I don't think it's ever too early to do a startup, but also startups are really highly variable in terms of what the startup's about, how it how tech forward it is, et cetera. So it does depend a lot on what exactly you're doing. For instance, if you're trying to work on a product that is really geared toward serving development teams within large enterprises, like you probably want to get at least some experience and some affinity for the customer. However you can. So yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Yeah. One other big question I had, I did pretty much the bare minimum amount of actual research while I was in college. I did like a freshman research program, and it was really great. But I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about what type of research you did, and then also how you kind of have applied it throughout your career, and especially at Plasmic, because I looked through your LinkedIn profile, and it looked like there was a lot with scaling and some of these really big ideas that you know, are having to be tackled at pretty much every company for a bunch
Yeah.
of different things. So I think yeah, it'd be great to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. So my research, this is gonna draw from deep in the recesses of my memory, but essentially, yes, it was in a lot of it was around scaling distributed database systems, specifically in distributed systems. That was kind of where I was focused, and this was back in like there was this period when um, uh, like NoSQL and these like alternative storage systems were kind of on the rise or trending, and so it was a fun time to be working on that stuff. A lot of focus on big data and how to make things scale to massive scale. Of course, like these types of problems were like really narrowly focused on just very large problem sizes, which almost all the time you don't really need to have for especially like startups, but also teams within large companies. It's rare to need that level of scale, and so uh, in terms of where this kind of research gets applied and fits in. Um, you know, Usually the outcome of the research is not so much based on like the artifact, but the ideas that you're exploring and communicating. So you synthesize these ideas, and they may make their way into the actual products, but that's not kind of the end goal. It's more just to like map out the territory, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think one really interesting thing about Plasmic is how reusable it makes different code components and how easy it is to start making new things. So I think especially with smaller companies, I know they don't really have the amount of resources needed to really scale their websites and build out a lot of these different um, pages or platforms. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe some of the ways Plasmic can help with that scaling that besides just the builders and things like that, the maybe the benefits that people wouldn't expect?
Yeah, I think that at a base level, the fact that Plasmic is this no-code tool means it's accessible to that's what we want to do. We want to keep the creation of these experiences and these surfaces as approachable as possible to as broad an audience as possible. And so there is that aspect, which is I think the core value prop, collaboration. Once you are able to empower other people on your team to work on things, for instance, if you're empowering the design team or the marketing team to just be able to directly jump in there and create these surfaces, then that helps everyone. That removes a bunch of like pixel pushing type of tasks that typically get filed on engineering, that helps enable the marketing team to move as fast as they want toward their goals if they want to launch a new page or campaign or anything like that. And that also allows designers to exercise more control over exactly what the experience they want to have for their end users. Uh, so it's kind of like this win-win all around. But in addition to that, I think we've also seen Plasmic used a lot by developers themselves. So it's not like a developers not allowed tool. We actually see developers using it for very interesting things, actually. And this is kind of taking us into like the next leg that we want to explore with Plasmic. Because right now, Plasmic is used a lot for these marketing websites and websites in general, building pages. But what we've seen developers do is actually use it as an app builder. And that's actually how we use it ourselves. We use Plasmic to build Plasmic, the studio, and not just our website, but like the studio app itself. Yeah, we've seen other teams actually do exactly that, creating um, full apps, whether they're kind of internal business tools, or whether they're customer facing. This is something that we're pretty excited about in terms of like what's coming down the pipe for Plasmic.
I
Yeah,
think that's oh, sorry, Brent.
no, I was just agreeing. Yeah, you could go ahead, please.
I was just saying, I think that's a really good like selling point of your app, that you can have people like get your software engineers off of like working on that stuff, that like they can work on more high value tasks, and also like you could just hire someone without the software engineering experience and without that like massive salary to build a website or build an app, at least like help out partially. Like you can have interns doing it. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good time to be an engineer, but yeah, that's right. I think that also like engineering teams within companies tend to be already like really underwater with a ton of things to do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely. And I think the fact that you can bring in different code components and really put it together however you want, then it's at that point, it's kind of the possibilities are pretty endless already. So yeah, definitely excited to see where y'all go from here. Speaking a little bit more about these no code tools or low code tools, what are some of the benefits besides just making it easier to build things that people don't expect, or maybe that's lower errors or something like that? Or have you run into a lot of those different things that you didn't really expect?
Yeah. So there's actually a few examples of this. One is uh, in terms of the quality of what you deliver. Um, when when you're using a tool like Plasmic, it really puts front and center the final results of what you're building, and that just a really small example of this. Just the fact that we are always helping you keep visible what your page looks like across different screen sizes is something that we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on. This is something that really helps ensure that you are building the right thing for your users. And um, and beyond that, of course, just the fact that this is kind of a visual canvas and you're manipulating exactly what things will look like once they are in front of your users, means that the kind of design and the final sort of impression that you put upon users is exactly what you're expecting it to be. So that level of essentially quality of the final deliverable is something that we've definitely gotten a strong positive feedback on. The another aspect of this is actually around qualities like performance, where it can be tricky to actually build in code like a very high performance website, something that is encoding all the best practices and whatnot. You just have to know a lot and know also a lot what not to do. So this is something that Plasmic kind of tries to build in as much as possible, so that like when you go and you paste an image into Plasmic, for instance, it's actually there's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes there. And like you could be pasting in like a multi-megabyte image into your Plasmic project, and just behind the scenes we transparently process it, minify it, serve it in multiple resolutions, and you just don't worry about it, right? Like it's you shouldn't be worrying about it in this day and age, but because it's all pretty well understood at this point. It's just a matter of like the tooling and the workflows catching up to that. And that's just like one tiny example, but everything from like the way that CSS is processed and served, to like the way that you know, your different versions of your page get hydrated. There's just a lot to know, and I think we try to make it as we try to help users really fall into like what we call the pit of success here, just obliviously, you know.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah.
I think like one thing, I don't know if this is really relevant, but like I've used Wix before, and it's like it's similar. It's not the exact same thing, but it's really slow. Like when it like lags like every time you drag something, and that was like really annoying. Like I almost immediately dropped that. So do you guys experience the same issues or no?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think like making the editor itself performant
Mm,
is just like an evergreen thing. Like I actually, you know, I think um, I've also had a similar experience with Wix.
oh,
I, but not to pick on them. I think, you know, it is hard to build this type of tool in a way that is like fast and responsive. Um, but I think we're like I think we have a good starting point here in
mm,
Plasmic Studio. You know, we have users basically using Plasmic to build websites with like uh, many dozens of pages, and uh, you know, the performance side of it is just there's always more to do, but I think
yeah.
um, yeah, we have a good starting point.
Well, I was building a website with one page on Wix and it wasn't working. So it sounds like you guys already have a foot up on them.
Yeah. No, and I think one of the features that I really am just a huge fan of is the fact that you can copy and paste from different tools like Figma directly to Plasmic. So you can make all your designs and mockups in a different platform that's maybe built a little bit more for that designer. So maybe that's something they're a little bit more used to. And then making it all straight into code, I think that is insanely cool. So yeah, huge props for that. I think that's insane. Um Kind of touching a little bit more back on maybe the strategy of building websites and the strategy of specifically marketing websites.
Yeah,
Because I know you touched a little bit on how you really think or how you really enjoy making that front end really sing for the customer. Have you noticed anything in particular, especially over maybe the last few years, um, that really makes a website go from good to great, or really helps draw people in or retain customers?
yeah. So I think that one thing we, you know, one thing we've seen from just our time in Plasmic is like there is no like the field is uh, constantly changing in terms of, you know, design trends, best practices. So uh, there's one constant, which is change. I think it, it does depend a lot on like the specific vertical and the business you're building, because, you know, uh, like even just if I focus on Plasmic, it is currently being used by everything from like uh, big insurance tech companies to, you know, to cosmetic skincare brands to just like individuals homepages and blogs. Um, so it's such a huge you know space. But I think there's some things that are common here. Performance is one big one where, you know, like especially now with Google's new ranking algorithm that actually penalizes slow sites, and there's a lot more incentive, even more than before, right? Because like there's always been these like studies of how, you know, a drop in latency can, or an increase in latency can correlate with, you know, a 10% decrease in revenue or what have you. But now that's about like kind of bottom of funnel conversion. But now even for top of funnel, just like making it into your website and seeing it rank higher on the rankings, that's something that is affected by page performance. So growth, you know, is is directly tied into performance in that way. There's another which is I think that maybe somewhat related to that is essentially showing the right content to the right audience is also really important. So this can mean, actually creating personalized or differently segmented versions of your page for different audiences, and just trying to make the message as relevant to them as possible. This is another pillar, I think, of making content that resonates.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one big aspect we're trying to tackle right now for our onboarding, is to make sure that different types of users have the basically the ideal experience that would be for them. So yeah, that's definitely interesting to hear. So I know we're trying to make things simpler for developers. We're trying to, take out a lot of these inconsistencies. It seems like y'all are trying to also do that with taking out a lot of the annoyances of web development, and specifically with front end, especially. Do you see any other particular areas where maybe either Plasmic comes in and makes things simpler for customers, or just in general, if you see areas where developers are still having a lot of bumps that they have to get past that they might not need to?
Yeah. So I think a big one is I was alluding a little bit to this earlier, just around things beyond static landing pages. So right now, I think we're doing a good job of serving these teams and helping offload a lot of like the kind of pixel pushing work that engineers have to take on, and empowering like these other teams to serve themselves in these various ways. But engineering teams still have a lot of other work that they have to plow through, including like building various apps. Behind every company, behind every flagship, web app or website, there's a ton of internal operations and processes and workflows and other auxiliary apps. Like, you've got your app for your customer support tickets and your app for this and that. And so there's all these different apps that are being built all the time. And, that's kind of another thing we really want to still be able to help, because engineers, developers are there's there's no shortage of demand on developers' time, and I think that honestly, like the way that products, a lot of apps are built today, is just way more complex than they need to be. Like our goal really is to make it feel as easy as jumping into just like editing a document and hitting save. But yeah, that's that's what we want to shoot for with Plasmic.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Oh, I think you're muted here.
Oh,
or maybe
I was just
am I?
saying that's awesome. Am I good now?
Yeah, you're good. You're
Okay,
good.
awesome. I think one more question from me, and then we can kind of finish out with any other questions that y'all have. I know you kind of touched a little bit on what Plasmic is kind of aiming for next. Is there any other kind of big, maybe big or small, kind of tasks that y'all are trying to do in either the near future or the far future? Because it seems like y'all have a great product already, and yeah, and then all these changes that you're making are also seeming like it's going to be just this game-changing tool. But are there any maybe specific small features that you're really excited about, like maybe that Figma
Yeah.
to Plasmic integration, things like that?
Yeah, that was actually in one area we were focusing on recently, where I'm excited for this feature, but basically the ability to like convert Figma components that you defined there into actual components in your Plasmic project, and that can include React, your existing React code. So that was one we shipped recently. But in terms of things coming up, I know the team has been really busy with one really important new feature. I think this will change the workflow for a lot of teams using Plasmic, is essentially branching. So this means you can actually fork, the project that you're working on and work on it kind of in your own pocket, and then ultimately merge it back into the mainline and be able to resolve conflicts, things like that. But we're trying to build an experience where, especially like the merge and conflict resolution, is not something that is just like a bunch of text diffs, and because dealing with conflicts even as a developer can be pretty hairy sometimes. So this is something we want to make a lot simpler. And yeah, so that's one big new feature that we're working on. There's another one which is also really exciting. This is around so today, what you can create in Plasmic are these very static experiences, landing pages. And if you want to, for instance, have when somebody clicks on a button to actually do something, to like kick off some logic or some behavior, you have to rely on code components for that. So you actually have to write code. But we're now introducing this like interactions layer into Plasmic. That can let people, anyone, just be able to define like, arbitrary kind of client-side behavior like this, and basically we're introducing state management into Plasmic. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That sounds yeah, especially the merging sounds like it's going to be a lot of work, but it sounds like it'll be an insanely good change. So yeah, that's awesome. Dylan, do you have a question?
I did, but I guess I was just gonna ask, like, I know you like have partnered with a bunch of other companies. Could you guys, like, and you were talking about the, like, you want to make the backend code list. Like, have you seen GitHub Copilot?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I think there's I mean, Copilot is like really game changer in terms of the type of tooling that I think it kind of represents,
Yeah.
which we'll see in the near future. So yeah, I actually have always thought also as Plasmic's mission is not like limited to building like making it easier to build marketing websites. We do have a long-term vision of really simplifying and changing how software is built. And I actually always thought that in the limit, Plasmic is an AI company, because that's ultimately, want to get to a place where you can actually just have a conversation with a machine and be able to have it create apps for you. It'll take us a long time to get there, but Copilot is like one really cool new step in that direction, actually.
Yeah, it really is.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming today. Sorry again for all the technical difficulties. Thank you for
No worries. Yeah.
Thank you to everybody for sticking with it. Yeah, no, it was really great to hear from you. I definitely took away a lot from this. So definitely really appreciate you coming and talking with us. Again, if you haven't checked out Plasmic yet, highly recommend doing it. If you aren't convinced by what you heard today that it's going to be a game-changing tool, then I don't know what else to tell you. It's really cool. So yeah, thank you again for coming. For those who are interested in DevRev, our beta is currently open. So be sure to check that out. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And yeah, thank you again for coming.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. And yeah, this was fun.
Awesome. All right, everybody have a great day. Yeah, and I'll see you again soon.
All right, take care.
All right, see you.